Hi, everyone. In this episode, we delve into chilling accounts of creatures so bizarre and elusive that they will challenge your understanding of the natural world. Bundle up as we hear the chilling details, examine the evidence, and attempt to unravel the truth behind these enigmatic creatures. So, if you're in it to win it, please squash that subscribe button and let's get into the stories. A little bit about myself to set the stage. My name is Alex Turner, a 45-year-old landscape photographer living in Missoula, Montana. For me, camping is more than a hobby. It's a passion. I've spent countless nights under the stars, exploring trails, and capturing the raw, natural beauty of our world. I don't do this for a living. My day job is a mechanical engineer, but the call of the wild has always been more appealing to me. I venture out every chance I get. I've encountered various animals, bears, coyotes, and once a very grumpy porcupine, but nothing had prepared me for what happened on a warm summer night in 2017. It was the 21st of June, and the Rocky Mountains called to me. Packing my gear and camera, I decided to spend a week in the heart of the wilderness, camping out in a secluded spot I'd been visiting since my late teens. I drove to my chosen site, near a serene lake surrounded by towering pine trees. On my third night, things took an unexpected turn. The night was clear, stars dusted the night sky like sprinkles on black velvet, and a cool breeze rustled the surrounding pines. I'd set up camp near the lake's edge, a little fire pit illuminating the surrounding area. Dinner was simple, beans straight from the can, and I was lying in my tent, listening to the soothing sounds of the night. That's when I heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A soft splash. Not like a fish jumping, but something larger breaking the surface. Armed with my flashlight, I carefully unzipped the tent. The first thing I noticed was the silence. The forest had stopped. No crickets, no owls, just stifling, heavy silence. The light from my flashlight fell onto the lake. The water rippled gently. In the heart of the lake, a figure moved. It was tall, around 7 feet, partially submerged in the water. Its body was lean, muscular, and covered in short, dark fur, slick and glistening in the moonlight. Its head was elongated, with sharp, pointed ears. The creature had 2 radiant yellow eyes that reflected an eerie glow in the flashlight beam. Its arms were long and powerful, ending in clawed hands that were paddling through the water. I held my breath, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The creature, unaware or perhaps unfazed by my presence, glided across the lake with a quiet grace. A low rumble, like a distant thunder, echoed across the lake. I realized it was coming from the creature. Not a growl, but something akin to a purr, a soft, contented sound. It moved until it reached the other side of the lake, disappearing into the tree line. I remained motionless long after it was gone. My heart pounded in my chest as I slowly retreated into my tent. The sounds of the forest tentatively resumed, filling the air with familiar nocturnal songs. Sleep evaded me for the rest of the night. At dawn, I approached the edge of the lake. There were large, clawed footprints etched into the muddy bank where the creature had emerged. I took pictures, evidence that it hadn't been some sleep-deprived hallucination. I felt a profound sense of wonder and fear. I had witnessed something extraordinary and terrifying, something that had shattered my understanding of what was possible in this world. The creature was a part of nature, yet unlike anything I'd ever known. Instead of leaving as any sane person might, I stayed. I spent the rest of the week at the campsite hoping for another glimpse, another encounter. It never came. The nights were peaceful and quiet, and the creature in the lake remained unseen. When I finally made my way back to civilization, I was different. The world was different. I felt a strange connection to that place, to the creature. I didn't share my story, not at first. I feared ridicule or disbelief, but over time, I realized the importance of sharing what I'd witnessed, of telling the world that there are still mysteries in our world, undiscovered and unexplained. The encounter shifted something within me. I looked at the wilderness with new eyes, a sense of humbleness replacing the familiarity I once felt. Each rustle in the trees, each ripple in the water was a reminder of the unknown, a testament to the wild, untamed beauty of the world. The creature in the lake became my obsession, an enigma I yearned to unravel, to understand. But above all, I respected its space, its secrecy. The creature, whatever it was, had its own world, its own rules. I was just a visitor. I carried the memory of that night with me on every trip, a permanent fixture in my adventures. Every once in a while, I returned to the same spot by the lake. I've never seen the creature again, but its presence lingers. I feel it in the silence of the night, in the mystery of the dark waters. I feel it in the echoes of that distant rumble, forever imprinted in my mind. It's a reminder, a testament to the unknown, the unexplored, and the undiscovered in this world. My name is Rebecca Stone. I am a 35-year-old software engineer from Oregon, and I have spent most of my life tucked behind computer screens, living a comfortable life amidst lines of code and complex algorithms. Being an introvert, I was content with my quiet life until the untimely death of my mother. In late 2017, she passed away, and I became the unexpected inheritor of a rustic, old family house nestled in upstate New York. After my mother's funeral, the loneliness in my Oregon apartment felt unbearable, and I decided to move into this inherited house in hopes of some solace and change. So, in early spring 2018, I found myself traversing across states to make my new start in a house at the edge of the small town of Windham, New York. The house, set deep within the Catskill Mountains, was beautiful in a time-worn way, a 2-storied structure with gray wooden paneling and moss-covered shingles, surrounded by the ceaseless serenity of nature. Yet the transition wasn't smooth. The stillness of the town, the remoteness of the house, all felt eerily alien to me. I wondered if I had made a mistake. One evening, around a month after moving, something strange happened. It was May 18, 2018, a night that would etch into my memory for years to come. The evening was humid, carrying the scent of an approaching storm. I was in the study reading when I heard a peculiar rustling sound from outside, followed by a series of low, guttural grunts. Assuming it was perhaps a stray animal, I went to the kitchen window, which overlooked the backyard. The moment I parted the curtains, my heart lurched. There, in the garden, partially hidden by the old apple tree, was a creature I had never seen before. It was bipedal, standing at around 7 feet, its body lean and covered in a dark, shiny fur that flickered under the dim porch light. It had long, muscular arms which hung eerily by its side, its hands sporting claws that glinted ominously. Its head was elongated and somewhat canine with a pronounced snout, but its eyes were the most chilling part, glowing a bright, disturbing amber. I stood frozen at the window, staring at this unexplainable creature. It moved slowly, its movements eerily human-like, sniffing the air occasionally as it scavenged through my garden. The sight was petrifying, but there was a strange allure to it too, a wild, untamed elegance that held me captive. After what felt like an eternity, the creature retreated into the woods, leaving behind an unsettling silence. The reality of what I had seen began to sink in, and my knees buckled. I sat on the kitchen floor, trying to comprehend what just happened. The next few days were filled with fear and fascination. I kept myself locked indoors, too terrified to venture out after sundown. I started reading up on local folklore and wildlife, trying to identify what I had seen, but nothing seemed to fit. Even my attempts to casually discuss strange animals with locals only garnered strange looks or dismissive laughs. The feeling of isolation became oppressive, the once beautiful mountains now a looming threat. I considered moving out, but where would I go? This house, this town, was my last connection to my mother. Instead, I opted for getting a large dog, a gentle yet protective German Shepherd. I named Max for company and protection. As days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the fear gradually began to subside. I didn't see the creature again. However, every rustle in the woods, every unidentifiable sound at night still sends a shiver down my spine. While the encounter was petrifying, it also ignited a peculiar sense of intrigue within me. The software engineer from Oregon, who once found solace in her structured, predictable world, now finds herself studying about cryptids, local folklore, and unknown creatures in her free time. And so, I continue to live in the house my mother left me, amidst the serene but haunting woods of Windham. I keep my doors locked and Macs closed, the memory of that April night never too far from my thoughts. It's an odd existence, marked by a mix of dread and fascination, and an undercurrent of respect for the wild, untamed mysteries that lurk just beyond our understanding. For the last 10 years, I've seen countless grizzly and black bears, wolves, bison, mountain lions, elk, and other wildlife in my career at Yellowstone. Just this week, I had the chance to see 2 different grizzlies up close, about 30 feet away. This occurred while hiking a trail with some friends of mine who also work here, either as rangers or interpretive staff. Interpretive staff are essentially tour guides. Both encounters occurred within Hayden Valley, but that's not necessarily important right now because what happened to me on Friday night was much more chilling than any bear sighting could ever be. I decided to stay late on Friday to clean up my patrol truck before it got too late to go into Canyon Village. This is where I work my patrol shifts. There's just this one spot along Dunraven Pass Road, which is located north of Canyon Village, where strange occurrences happen. For example, I was out with my partner when we came across what appeared to be a mutilated deer carcass. There were weird symbols carved into the ground around it, and the deer's body had been cut open in a strange way. We reported it to our supervisor, who told us to keep an eye out for anything suspicious. After all, this was clearly the work of a person. A few weeks later, we were on patrol near the same spot on the pass and saw a group of about 20 people acting suspiciously. They had these weird glow stick things that they were hanging around their necks, arms, and legs. They looked like some sort of cult or something. We decided to park our truck down the road from them, off in the woods, where we could see them, but they could not see where we were. We were trying to keep ourselves out of view. We watched for about 20 minutes what I can only describe as a ceremony that took place right outside of Canyon Village. There was chanting going on, and they were carving these bizarre symbols with chalk on the ground. All these people just stand around doing strange things. I've never seen anything like this before or since until last night, in September of 2014. This is why I'm telling my story now, because what happened then scared me more than a grizzly bear ever could. So Friday night after work, around 9, I go back out there on Dunraven Pass Road where we initially found the mutilated deer carcass. This time there was another one. It was a bison. It appeared to have been decapitated, and the organs and meat had been ripped away from the body, and there were more symbols carved into the ground. We reported that to our supervisor, and they told us to increase our patrols in that area, but that didn't seem to stop anything. Things only would get stranger because a few days later, while on patrol near Roosevelt Tower, we found an abandoned vehicle. It was a van that had been spray painted with all sorts of symbols, and there was also a dead deer inside of it. The van had been completely gutted, and inside was a dead deer with its body cut open and gutted. We called our supervisor, and they told us to confiscate it and go back to the village. So we did that, and they told us to spend the rest of our shift patrolling in different areas of the park. I'm not going to say where, because I don't want people out camping looking for these things. But the next night, I was back on patrol near Canyon Village. Now this time, something strange happened. It was now around 10 p.m., and this group of about 5 or 6 people came walking up from behind me carrying those same strange glow sticks around their necks and arms and legs. I watched as they gathered together along one of the roadsides, right along one of the pull-offs. They were all standing over by this one spot, about 30 feet away from where I was parked. I had no idea if they could see me, but they did not seem to care. I watched as all 5 or 6 of them took turns peering into the small hole in the ground, as if they were trying to either put something in it or pull something out of it. Then, all of a sudden, they all acted completely spooked and took off sprinting into the woods. Listen, I understand that the stories I'm telling you is strange. It just seems like there's some kind of crazy cult that is targeting animals purposefully, and I'm scared they might come after people next. On the 17th of July, 2015, my brother Max and I decided to embark on a week-long backpacking trip through the heart of Yosemite National Park. Nestled within California's Sierra Nevada mountains, Yosemite was a place Max and I cherished since childhood. Its awe-inspiring vistas, alpine wilderness, and lush valleys formed a landscape we knew well, but on this occasion, something was different. A bit about myself. My name is Evan, and at the time of our journey, I was 27 and an amateur wildlife photographer working for a local advertising firm in San Francisco. My brother, 2 years my junior, was an outdoor educator for a nonprofit organization, taking underprivileged kids on wilderness excursions. We were both avid outdoorsmen and felt at ease in nature, or so we thought. We started our hike from Tuolumne Meadows, intending to trek the northern section of the park, then loop back. The first few days were just as we expected, stunningly beautiful and equally exhausting. We set up camp near a stream on the 3rd night, planning to rest for a day before continuing our journey. That night, we encountered something. It was late, probably around 2 in the morning, when I was awakened by a noise outside our tent. It wasn't a common animal sound, but rather something indescribable. It was guttural, low, and echoed through the valley in an almost melodic way. Max woke up too, both of us listening in the deafening silence that followed. With hesitant curiosity, I unzipped the tent and peered out into the moonlit wilderness. At first, I saw nothing but the familiar sight of the forest. Then, about 50 feet away, down by the stream, I spotted it. The creature stood on all 4s, but unlike any quadruped I'd seen. Its body was slender, elongated, perhaps around 5 feet long from snout to the base of its tail. Its fur was dark, matted, and hung in long tangles from its lithe frame. The tail was thick and muscular, almost reptilian in shape. Its head, however, was what struck me the most. It was small compared to the body, with oversized, luminous, almond-shaped eyes that reflected the moonlight. The creature was drinking water from the stream, and as I watched, it lifted its head. Its movement was slow and deliberate, almost graceful. The eyes scanned the surroundings before resting on our tent. It didn't startle. Instead, it held my gaze with an intelligent, almost calm demeanor. We watched each other, the creature and I, in mutual, silent curiosity. In my dazed fascination, I hadn't noticed Max beside me until he let out a soft gasp. The creature then flickered its eyes, and in that split second, I felt a rush of fear. But rather than attack, the creature backed away, took one last look at us, and retreated into the darkness. After the encounter, Max and I were essentially speechless, and we didn't sleep that night. Instead, we kept a vigilant watch, half expecting the creature to return. But it didn't. The next day, we spent hours discussing what we'd seen, trying to match the creature to anything we knew. We couldn't. We even scoured the area for tracks, but found nothing. Our remaining days in Yosemite were shadowed by that experience, and despite the park's beauty, we felt an unease we'd never felt before. Once back in civilization, we researched more and reached out to local naturalists, sharing our encounter in careful detail. The general consensus was that we had seen an unknown creature. It was exciting but equally unsettling, challenging our understanding of the familiar wilderness. Today, 8 years later, the memory of that creature is as vivid as ever. The event changed my perspective on nature, reminding me of its many undiscovered facets. Max and I have returned to Yosemite multiple times since, but we've never encountered the creature again. Interestingly, despite the lingering unease, the experience has driven me towards wildlife conservation efforts. My photography has shifted to emphasize the importance of preserving habitats for all creatures, both known and unknown. We still share our story as much as we can, not as a cautionary tale, but as a testament to the mysteries nature continues to hold. We hope to make others as receptive to it as we have become. I've enjoyed hunting throughout the various forests located in Pennsylvania. I don't have a particular favorite. I enjoy all of them. There are many of us around here who enjoy a good bow hunt, and I am no exception. The forest in question is higher elevated, full of white pine and oak trees all throughout, with thicker flowers and brush. This was back in 2003, and I have had several friends who've been hunting in and around this area for years now. I've heard warnings that because of the large population of deer, there's supposedly a high amount of Bigfoot activity in certain areas. I was a Bigfoot believer before this happened to me, but I had no idea these wolf creatures existed. I didn't even think it was a possibility. And I've gone hunting in this forest for a few years prior to this event and never had anything strange occur. So I was confident and ready to get myself a nice trophy buck this year. I got up in the wee early hours before sunrise, made it out there with my bow. I remember the air being crisp and cool. The onset of fall was really setting in this particular year. I remember walking quite a way and making it to one of the stands that I had set up in the area. This particular stand I had perched quite high up on the tree, more so than normal. I climbed up, climbed in, and pulled out my coffee flask and sat and waited. I don't know at what point I noticed the silence, but I became aware that after some time, the noise in the woods died. You could hear a pin drop from a mile away. It felt eerie. I've been doing this for a while, and I've never had my skin crawl like it did in that moment. From what I would estimate to be about 300 plus yards away in the woods, there was a bunch of whimpering and howling. This was loud. It sounded distorted, not like you would expect if you heard a coyote or a wolf, both of which I've heard, and it didn't quite match the sounds. I was curious, and so I kept looking around, looking for any movement or anything possible that I could see. Still nothing. The whimpering and howling stopped, and I began to hear movement in the brush from a little way away, coming in my direction. Light now was just starting to break, and I could start to make out the minimal details around me. Things were still dead silent other than this movement that began sounding closer and closer. It sounded heavy, and I wasn't sure if it was a deer coming my way or what, but I could make out that there were multiple of whatever animals were approaching my direction. I heard branches breaking to my left, and out steps these three beings. Beings is what I'll call them because they certainly were not animals, and they were not humans. These three things walked in unison together, very coordinated, very organized, very tall. If I had to guess, well over 6 feet. Their fur was charcoal black and looked to be like they absorbed the light in the area. Their eyes, though, all of them had this horrible yellow glow to them as they slowly hunched over and walked slowly, taking their time with each stride. I tried to stay quiet and not make a sound as I went into full-on panic mode. These monsters, whatever they were, gave off an incredibly evil vibe. If they wanted to climb up into my stand and devour me alive, they could have easily. I held my breath, trying not to make a sound. Every step these things took, you could feel it in the ground below. I could tell these creatures weighed a great deal. That didn't surprise me with how much mass they carried around and how tall they were, and their stature. One of them stopped only a few feet away from me, right by my stand. This thing started lifting its head up and sniffing the air. It sounded loud, like a bear sniffing right outside somebody's tent. In that moment, I lost it, urinating all over myself. I was so scared. I'm watching this transpire all before my eyes. I'm very fortunate that my deer stand was up quite a way because had it been lower, it could have just reached right up and pulled me out. Now, this thing sniffed the air for a moment and did some sort of weird thing with its mouth. I can't even begin to describe the noise. It was like a clicking noise mixed with a guttural sigh. I don't know how to portray it accurately. It was communicating, though, with the other two. The others stopped and looked up in my direction, and I felt in that moment that I was ready to have a heart attack. I don't think these things saw me, but they looked right up at my stand. One of those things must have signaled for the other two that there was a person up in that stand, and I tightly gripped my combat knife like it was my life. I usually keep it strapped to my thigh. I was just praying my death would be swift and painless, knowing there was no way I'd be able to fight off 3 of these things. But they just stood there, all of them making this clicking, shattering, guttural noise, and then continued on westward. Once they were out of sight, I began crying. I was petrified. I had a hard time even convincing myself to move my body, and I needed to leave now before those things got back. If I was caught on foot, I was surely a dead man, and I was not going to have that. I managed to work my body enough to climb down my stand, and I ran quickly back to where I was originally. I should have probably given a little more clarity on what I saw and how exactly long that lasted because of the early morning hours. With the sun barely breaking through, light conditions were poor at best. So, a lot of what I saw was massive shapes and silhouettes and those darn glowing yellow eyes. The shape was like a massive body with a dog-like head and pointed ears on top. It reminded me of a German shepherd, actually. Same with the face. I could make out a very visible snout with more specific details that were hard to point out. I watched the entire thing play out in front of me, and I think it stuck its snout up in the air because it had possibly smelled me and was trying to communicate to the others that I was there. Their chattering almost reminded me of them arguing amongst themselves, unsure of what to do next. But again, it was very brief. They kept the same pace and stride all the way to where they were no longer visible. The entire occurrence probably only lasted 3 to 5 minutes at most, but in those moments, it was endless. It felt as if time itself had come to an utter stop. I didn't think I was going to make it out of there alive, and that experience alone really ruined the outdoors and hunting for me for quite a while.